Hello everyone. Today, we are going to talk about history of Italy. Let's start the video.
Can you talk about history of Italy, teacher?
Yes, of course, so we can start with general information. The history of Italy covers the ancient period, the Middle Ages and the modern era. In antiquity, Italy was the homeland of the Romans and the metropole of the Roman Empire. Rome was founded as a kingdom in 753 BC and became a republic in 509 BC, when the monarchy was overthrown in favor of a government of the Senate and the people. The Roman Republic then unified Italy at the expense of the Etruscans, Celts, and Greeks of the peninsula. Rome led the federation of the Italic peoples to the domination of Western Europe, Northern Africa, and the Near East. The Roman Empire later dominated Western Europe and the Mediterranean for many centuries, making immeasurable contributions to humanity. Some of these led to the development of Western philosophy, science and art, that remained central during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. After the fall of Rome in AD 476, Italy remained fragmented in numerous city-states and regional polities until the Italian unification led to the establishment of an Italian nation-state. The new Kingdom of Italy, established in 1861, quickly modernized and built a large colonial empire, colonizing parts of Africa and countries along the Mediterranean. However, the southern regions of the young nation remained rural and poor, originating the Italian diaspora. In World War I, Italy joined the Entente with France and Britain, despite having been a member of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, and gave a fundamental contribution to the victory of the conflict as one of the principal Allied powers. Italy completed the unification by acquiring Trento and Trieste, and gained a permanent seat in the League of Nations' Executive Council. Nevertheless, Italian nationalists considered World War I a mutilated victory, and that sentiment led to the rise of the fascist dictatorship of Benito Mussolini in 1922. The subsequent participation in World War II on the side of Germany and Japan ended in military defeat and an Italian civil war. Following the liberation of Italy, the country abolished the monarchy with a referendum, reinstated democracy, enjoyed an economic miracle, and founded the European Union, NATO, and the Group of Six, later G7 and G20. It remains a strong economic, cultural, military and political factor in the 21st century. Now I will talk about early years of Italy. In 27 BCE, Octavian was the sole Roman leader. His leadership brought the zenith of the Roman civilization that lasted for 4 decades. In that year, he took the name Augustus. That event is usually taken by historians as the beginning of Roman Empire. Officially, the government was republican, but Augustus assumed absolute powers. The Senate granted Octavian a unique grade of proconsular imperium, which gave him authority over all proconsuls, military governors. The unruly provinces at the borders, where the vast majority of the legions were stationed, were under the control of Augustus. These provinces were classified as imperial provinces. The peaceful senatorial provinces were under the control of the Senate. The Roman legions, which had reached an unprecedented number, around 50, because of the civil wars, were reduced to 28. This mosaic depicts some of the gladiators' entertainments that would have been offered at the games. Under Augustus's rule, Roman literature grew steadily in the golden age of Latin literature. Poets like Virgil, Horace, Ovid and Rufus developed a rich literature, and were close friends of Augustus. Along with Maecenas, he stimulated patriotic poems, as Virgil's Epic Aeneid, and also historiographical works, like those of Livy. The works of this literary age lasted through Roman times, and are classics. Augustus also continued the shifts on the calendar promoted by Caesar, and the month of August is named after him. Augustus' enlightened rule resulted in a 200 years long peaceful and thriving era for the empire, known as Pax Romana. Despite its military strength, the empire made few efforts to expand its already vast extent, the most notable being the conquest of Britain, begun by Emperor Claudius 47, and Emperor Trajan's conquest of Dacia 101-102, 105-106. In the 1st and 2nd century, Roman legions were also employed in intermittent warfare with the Germanic tribes to the north and the Parthian Empire to the east. Meanwhile, armed insurrections, for example the Hebraic insurrection in Judea, 70, and brief civil wars, for example in 68 CE, the year of the 4 emperors, demanded the legion's attention on several occasions. The 70 years of Jewish-Roman wars in the second half of the 1st century and the first half of the 2nd century were exceptional in their duration and violence. An estimated 1,356,460 Jews were killed as a result of the First Jewish Revolt. The Second Jewish Revolt, 115-117, led to the death of more than 200,000 Jews. And the Third Jewish Revolt, 132-136, resulted in the death of 580,000 Jewish soldiers. The Jewish people never recovered until the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. After the death of Emperor Theodosius I, 395, the empire was divided into an Eastern and a Western Roman Empire. The western part faced increasing economic and political crisis and frequent barbarian invasions, so the capital was moved from Mediolanum to Ravenna. In 476, the last Western emperor Romulus Augustulus was deposed by Odoacer. For a few years Italy stayed united under the rule of Odoacer, but soon after it was divided between several barbarian kingdoms, and did not reunite under a single ruler until 13 centuries later. Okay. You are going to search another information about history of Italy for tomorrow and you will talk about. Yes, we're listening you. You can start.
The Italian fascist movement was founded on the 23rd of March 1919 by Benito Mussolini. Mussolini was a World War I veteran, working for the socialist newspapers until he broke off and established his new nationalist organization, Fasci di Combattimento. In 1919, at the Paris Peace Conference, Italy was denied the execution of wartime secret Treaty of London. 1915, it had concorded with the Triple Entente, wherein Italy was to leave the Triple Alliance and join the enemy, by declaring war against the German Empire and Austria-Hungary, in exchange for territories, Istria and Dalmatia, at war's end, upon which the Kingdom of Italy held claims. The disrespect for the promises caused widespread indignation among Italian nationalists, while poet and adventurer Gabriele D'Annunzio led an expedition to occupy ethnic Italian Fiume, assigned to Yugoslavia. At the same time, the so-called Biennio Rosso, Red Biennium, took place in the 2 years following the First World War in a context of economic crisis, high unemployment and political instability. The 1919-20 period was characterized by mass strikes, worker manifestations as well as self-management experiments through land and factories occupations. In Turin and Milan, workers' councils were formed and many factory occupations took place under the leadership of anarcho-syndicalists. The agitations also extended to the agricultural areas of the Podon Plain and were accompanied by peasant strikes, rural unrests and guerrilla conflicts between left-wing and right-wing militias. Thenceforth, the Fasci di Combattimento, forerunner of the National Fascist Party, 1921, of Benito Mussolini successfully exploited the claims of Italian nationalists and the quest for order and normalization of the middle class. In 1920, old Prime Minister Giolitti was reappointed in a desperate attempt to solve Italy's deadlock, but his cabinet was weak and threatened by a growing socialist opposition. Giolitti believed that the fascists could be toned down and used to protect the monarchy from the socialists. He decided to include fascists on his electoral list for 1921 elections. Citation needed. In the elections, the fascists did not make large gains, but Giolitti's government failed to gather a large enough coalition to govern and offered the fascists placements in his government. The fascists rejected Giolitti's offers and joined with socialists in bringing down his government. In October 1922, Mussolini took advantage of a general strike to announce his demands to the Italian government to give the fascist party political power or face a coup. With no immediate response, a group of 30,000 fascists began a long trek across Italy to Rome, the March on Rome, claiming that fascists were intending to restore law and order. The fascists demanded Prime Minister Luigi Facchi's resignation and that Mussolini be named to the post. Although the Italian army was far better armed than the fascist militias, the liberal system and King Victor Emmanuel III were facing a deeper political crisis. The king was forced to choose which of the two rival movements in Italy would form the government, Mussolini's fascists, or the Marxist Italian Socialist Party. He selected the fascists. Upon taking power, Mussolini formed a coalition with nationalists and liberals. In 1923, Mussolini's coalition passed the Electoral Acerbo law, which assigned 2/3 of the seats to the party that achieved at least 25% of the vote. The fascist party used violence and intimidation to achieve the threshold in the 1924 election, thus obtaining control of parliament. Socialist deputy Giacomo Matteotti was assassinated after calling for a nullification of the vote because of the irregularities. Duggan, 2012, using private diaries and letters, and secret police files, argues that Mussolini enjoyed a strong, wide base of popular support among ordinary people across Italy. Mussolini elicited emotional responses unique in modern Italian history, and kept his popularity despite the military reverses after 1940. Duggan argues that his regime exploited Mussolini's appeal and forged a cult of personality that served as the model that was emulated by dictators of other fascist regimes of the 1930s. Thank you for listening.
Thank you too. You gave a lot of special informations to us. I will tell you last part. Listen to me carefully. The aftermath of World War II left Italy with a destroyed economy and a divided society. Following Victor Emmanuel III's abdication, his son, the new King Umberto II, was pressured by the threat of another civil war to call a constitutional referendum to decide whether Italy should remain a monarchy or become a republic. On the 2nd of June 1946, the Republican side won 54% of the vote and Italy officially became a republic. All male members of the House of Savoy were barred from entering Italy, a ban which was only repealed in 2002. Under the Treaty of Peace with Italy, in 1947, the eastern border area was annexed by Yugoslavia, causing the Austrian exodus, while Italy lost all its overseas possessions. The general elections of 1946, held at the same time as the constitutional referendum, elected 556 members of a constituent assembly, of which 207 were Christian Democrats, 115 socialists, and 104 communists. A new constitution was approved, setting up a parliamentary democracy. In 1947, under American pressure, the communists were expelled from the government. The Italian general election, 1948, saw a landslide victory for Christian Democrats that dominated the system for the following 40 years. Italy joined the Marshall Plan, ERP, and NATO. By 1950, the economy had largely stabilized and started booming. In 1957, Italy was a founding member of the European Economic Community, which later transformed into the European Union, EU. The Marshall Plan's long-term legacy was to help modernize Italy's economy. How Italian society built mechanisms to adapt, translate, resist, and domesticate this challenge had a lasting effect on the nation's development over the subsequent decades. 128 After fascism's failure, the United States offered a vision of modernization that was unprecedented in its power, internationalism, an invitation to emulation. However, Stalinism was a powerful political force. The ERP was one of the main ways that this modernization was operationalized. The old prevailing vision of the country's industrial prospects had been rooted in traditional ideas of craftsmanship, frugality and thrift, which stood in contrast to the dynamism seen in automobiles and fashion, anxious to leave behind the protectionism of the fascist era and take advantage of the opportunities offered by rapidly expanding world trade. By 1953, industrial production had doubled compared with 1938, and the annual rate of productivity increase was 6.4%, twice the British rate. At Fiat, automobile production per employee quadrupled between 1948 and 1955, the fruit of an intense, Marshall Plan-aided application of American technology, as well as much more intense discipline on the factory floor. Vittorio Valletta, Fiat's general manager, helped by trade barriers that blocked French and German cars, focused on technological innovations as well as an aggressive export strategy. He successfully bet on serving the more dynamic foreign markets from modern plants built with the help of Marshall Plan funds. From this export base he later sold into a growing domestic market, where Fiat was without serious competition. Fiat managed to remain at the cutting edge of car manufacturing technology, enabling it to expand production, foreign sales, and profits. Berlusconi won the general election in 2008, with the People of Freedom Party, fusion of his previous Forza Italia party and of Fini's National Alliance, against Walter Veltroni of the Democratic Party. In 2010, Berlusconi's party saw the splintering of Gianfranco Fini's new faction, which formed a parliamentary group and voted against him in a no-confidence vote on the 14th of December 2010. Berlusconi's government was able to avoid no confidence thanks to support from sparse MPs, but has lost a consistent majority in the lower chamber. On the 16th of November 2011, Berlusconi's resignation, the famous economist Mario Monti sworn in as new prime minister at the head of a technocratic government. On 24 and the 25th of February 2013 a new election was held. The center-left coalition of Pierluigi Bersani, leader of the Democratic Party, win a majority in the Chamber of Deputies but not in the Senate. It was shocking the result of the anti-establishment Five-Star Movement, founded by the former comedian Beppe Grillo, which gained 25.5% of votes, becoming the first party in the country. On the 24th of April, Giorgio Napolitano gave to the Vice Secretary of the Democratic Party, Enrico Letta, the task of forming a government, having determined that Pierluigi Bersani could not form a government, because it did not have a majority in the Senate. Letta formed a grand coalition government, supported also by the People of Freedom of Silvio Berlusconi and Civic Choice of Mario Monti. Letta's cabinet lasted until the 22nd of February 2014, for a total of 300 days, as the government fell apart after the Democratic Party retired its support of Letta in favor of Matteo Renzi, the 39-year-old mayor of Florence and nicknamed Illinois Rotamatore, the Scrapper, who succeeded Letta as prime minister at the head of a new government with three center parties: New Center-Right, Civic Choice and Union of the Center. The cabinet has been the youngest government of Italy up to date, with an average age of 47. In addition, it has also been the first in which the number of female ministers is equal to the number of male ministers. The government implemented numerous reforms, including changes to the electoral system, a relaxation of labor and employment laws with the intention of boosting economic growth, a thorough reformation of the public administration and the introduction of same-sex civil unions. However, after a failed constitutional referendum, Italy entered a period of political instability culminating in a general election that resulted in a hung parliament and the subsequent formation of the first populist government in Western Europe. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget subscribe my channel and like the video.